Call the December 2020 USD 350 Board of Education meeting in order. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
I have none.
Okay. Can we get a motion to approve?
Mr. President, I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Consent agenda.
I have nothing unusual to report on the consent agenda.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right. First up, financial audit.
Okay. We're just gonna go through the blue folder real quick. I'm not gonna go in a lot of detail. I'll kind of tell you what's there. You can look at it on your own. If you have questions, either contact me or Josh if I don't cover it. So page 1 and 2 of the audit report is our opinion. Same opinion as what you've had in the past. It's an unqualified opinion in accordance with the regulatory basis of accounting. It does talk in there about the financial statements are not being in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, but that's okay. That's allowed. At the top of page 2, it talks about that adverse opinion on U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. Remember, beginning of every year, you all adopt a resolution that allows you to use the regulatory basis of accounting for your financial statement presentation. That allows you to basically prepare your financial statements on the same basis of accounting that you prepare your budget on. So that way everything's comparable. So important part is the second paragraph in page 2 where it says, in our opinion, the financial statement presents fairly non-material respects the cash balances, unencumbered cash balances of the district. So again, it is a clean, unqualified opinion. The other matters I'll show you as we go through the audit report, kind of where those sections are. They're divided, so you'll be able to tell. But basically, this just says that in addition to the financial statements, we've audited these regulatory required information and that they are fairly presented to and all material respects in accordance with the regulatory basis of accounting. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, if we flip over to page 3 and 4, Josh.
No, I don't know if I can get this to show up 2 pages.
Well, yeah, we're mainly going to be looking at page 4.
Okay.
So, this is just the financial statement shows all the funds of the district, the beginning unencumbered cash, receipts, expenditures, ending unencumbered cash, any encumbrances that you have outstanding, and then the cash balance. Couple things. The ending unencumbered cash balance column, that shows compliance with the cash basis budget law. Okay? Cash basis budget law says that you cannot spend or encumber to spend any more funds than you have available. So when you go down that column, if you were to see a fund with a negative, that would indicate a potential cash basis violation. And again, you'll notice all of your funds are positive, even though like general funds always going to be close to 0 because that's the way school finance formula is. They give you just enough money to spend your budget. If you compare beginning cash to ending cash, and we'll look at some of the funds later on in the form of graphs that show the makeup of those cash balances. But as an overview, the 768 compared to the 738 beginning unencumbered cash is about a 4% increase. So again, I know in the state has emphasized that districts are not in the business of being a bank, but by the same token, you do have to have some carryover in order to operate efficiently. So again, this just shows you that you're maintaining those cash balances. Again, we'll look a little later at some of the individual funds that make those up. Okay? Any questions? Okay, let's flip on over to starting on page 5 are the notes to the financial statements. Again, those just provide an overview explanation of some of the items in the financial statement, like for example, note C, basis of accounting. It explains some of the differences between, and again, just a brief overview, some of the differences between the regulatory basis of accounting and generally accepted accounting principles. One thing to keep in mind is that the regulatory basis of accounting is a more conservative presentation format than GAAP, general accepted accounting principles. That's why the state uses that basis for the budget preparation, because again, you know, they want to make sure that people don't run out of money, you know, municipalities and school districts don't run out of money. So it is more conservative. The encumbrances are recognized in the cycle sooner than they would be under general accepted accounting principles, those kind of things. We flip on over to page 7. As part of an audit, in accordance with the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide, we're required to review the financial operations, the statutes that pertain to the financial operations of the district. And if we come across something that where, you know, didn't quite meet the statute, we're required to have you present that and report it. And that's what that one is there. What happens, and again, it's not uncommon with schools especially, because banks are being very cautious on pledging of security. So, and they're doing a good job of watching that each month and monitoring it to make sure at month end you're adequately secured. Problem is, your state aid from the state comes in at the beginning of the month. So this happened a couple of years ago. So in February is always the high, because you've got your January tax distributions. It was fine at January 31st. I mean, it was close, but it was adequately secured. And then February the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, you got about $300,000 of state aid between general and supplemental general. So what that does is that kicks you, being oversecured for about 4 or 5 days until the payroll came out. So, because again, that security is based on the balance in the bank as those checks clear. Now, again, a lot of them are direct deposit and those clear immediately, but there's always about a 4 or 5 day lag between those state aid payments and then when the payroll comes out. So, again, I talked with Lisa and Josh, and you know, all you can do is in January, you know, give yourself, realize that your state aid's going to be about $300,000. So when you see that ending analysis that's prepared by the bank, when that gets around $300,000, you know you need to ask for additional security. The only time it's ever been an issue is in February when that state aid comes in on top of the.
And what we've tried to do with the bank is just say, we don't think our balance is ever going to be
Above this.
And last year we missed the mark.
Mhm.
And
Well, it's easy to
several
do.
days,
It's easy to do.
the state law allows us to have a period of time where we can waive those requirements.
You could. That's called a peak period agreement.
Right.
The problem with peak period agreements is it allows you, basically, you can designate like 2 60-day periods that are peak periods.
Right.
The problem, the reason we don't like them is all it does is it gets you out of the statutory violation. You know? It doesn't mean that you're fully secured. It just means you can be undersecured.
Right.
We'd rather you shoot for being secured,
Yes.
and if you're short 4 or 5 days, that's better than being 60 days undersecured and not having a violation. Yeah, so, but absolutely, that used to be pretty common when I first started doing this stuff. That's been 100 years ago almost, but honestly, we don't have anybody that And then maybe it's because we've always discouraged it, saying, again, I think there was a misconception that you got an extra amount of security coverage.
Right.
You really don't, you're just allowed to be 50% security, so. Good question, good comment. The rest of the notes are pretty self-explanatory. Page 9 and 10 shows the debt. Those are the lease purchases on the building and then the Bluebird bus. It shows the maturity schedule on those, so, those both will be matured in 2024. So, it's not that far off. I tell you, time flies. Time flies. Note on page 11 and page 12 primarily, note 10 talks about defined benefit pension plan. Again, it's a synopsis, a brief summary, but it's a pretty good explanation of the CAPER system and how the CAPER retirement system works. The CAPERs flow through, for each municipality, for schools. The state provides you with the funding, and then CAPER takes the funding. So it's an in and an out, because under the state constitution, the state is required to make the payments. The way they do that, because they want to show every school district's relative share, the state will send you state aid for the payment, and then they'll turn around and CAPERs within a matter of minutes will take it out on the same day. So it's just an in and an out, in and out. But this kind of talks about how that works. There's a paragraph down there that talks about the amount of money that you put in and was taken out. At the bottom, at the bottom of page 12, it talks about the amount of money that was, again, put in and taken out on behalf of your employees. On the top of page 13, again, I'm not going to go into how this is computed because it's actuarially computed. But bottom line is, you're required to disclose the amount of actuarial pension liability that would be attributable to your employees. But again, remember, unless they were to change the Constitution, it's not the district's responsibility to pay it, okay? So that pension liability looks like an awfully big number, but again, that's a requirement of the state to pay. And the way they'll pay it is just like they've been doing. Give the district money and then take it out, flow it through, okay? That's the notes. Any questions on those? Okay, we turn to, actually, if you look right before page 15, right there, John. There should be, keep on going down, there should be a little divider. There you go. Remember I told you that that paragraph below the opinion talks about the supplementary information. This is the section that is pertaining to. So again, it's a clean, unqualified opinion on the regulatory information, the required supplementary information. That's this section, okay? Page 15 and 16 show compliance with the budget law. When you adopt that budget, every August, everybody's concerned about the mill rate, and rightfully so, but you're also establishing the legal amount that can be spent in each fund. Okay, that's why it's called the legal maximum budget. That's also why when you look at those budget numbers, it's always 3 columns, the 2 prior years and then the budgeted year. Essentially, the prior year, the current year, and then the budget year. That budget year column is always quite a bit higher than the other 2 because it's not an operating budget. Josh is trying to put numbers in there that gives you the authority to spend all the funds that you have available. Not planning on doing that, but again, it gives you authority in case something comes up, you don't have to run and amend the budget. Okay? Again, remember under the school finance law, general and supplemental general fund, General fund, if you don't spend it, you send it back to the state. Okay, supplemental general fund, since you get state aid, if you don't spend the full budget, then the portion of the state aid gets sent back to the state. So it's important to, get those down to zero, and you've done a good job of that every year. The other thing about that is, again, regulatory basis of accounting, when we're talking about spending the budget, we're not just talking about purchasing goods and services. That's one way to spend the budget. The other way is to transfer the funds out of those two operating funds into your other special revenue funds, like special education, at risk. To help fund the future year budget, those constitute expenditures and use that budget for. Okay? Questions? Y'all are way too easy on me. Okay, we're going to speed up because the next, starting with the Schedule 2, what those are is each individual fund that we looked at, in that overview part, that financial statement. And again, this shows the revenues and expenditures compared to last year, compared to the budget. And the ending cash comes down to the same thing that we looked at, okay? Remember, when you're looking at the individual line items, it's a legal maximum budget. It's not an operating budget. So, line items can vary. Some can be positive, some can be negative. The state's not concerned about that. All the state's concerned about is that you don't spend more than you have available by fund. So, again, if you're over on one line item, you have to be under on another. General and supplemental expenditures are pretty much interchangeable. So, one year you may spend a certain expenditure out of general fund, the next year you may spend it out of supplemental, and that's okay. Okay? So we're going to speed up here. We're going to jump all the way back to, on page 46, 47, 48, that's the activity funds of the district. Not going to go through those again, other than to say that we do look at those, we do audit those. And again, in our opinion, are fairly presented in all material respect. Okay, then right after that is a section called Supplementary Information. This will be the graphs. There you go. Okay. Now again, these are not required under Kansas Municipal Accounting and Audit Guide, but we do audit them as part of the financial statement. So when you look here like this, and again, these are not, there's no necessarily, what's presented is things that we think are most meaningful. Now again, if there's something that Josh would like to fit in there, we can sure do it. But on page 49 shows the unencumbered cash balances of the district. Capital outlay, it was very high a few years ago. Last year it kind of dipped a little bit, or the year before, and then last year, 6/30/20, it jumped back up. So again, ending cash was 191. The year before it was 150, so about a 40,000 increase in cash. So again, capital outlay does that. That's not anything that I don't think anything to be concerned about, because again, capital outlay expenditures, come and go.
And a lot of our major expenses come in the summer.
Yeah.
And did we sign the contract in June, or did we sign it in July?
Right, and we did pick up, this does include encumbrances.
Seems like every year we have something
Some
that
that,
we
right.
intended on next year's budget, but actually signed the contract in June, so.
So we pull it
We
back
roll it back
into
on the
that
books.
year, yeah. That's, again, just timing differences, but even so, even with pulling that back in, your cash still increased, unencumbered cash, so. The other one is, we talked about capers and that, that fund, and again, we'll look at that. That's always zero, but we'll see the expenditures a little later. Contingency, you can see that it has stayed consistent the last 3 years, 4 years. it's 4.5% of your general fund budget. So there is no, used to be limits and caps and on it, but the state took those off 3 or 4 years ago. Last time they had a limit on it, the limit was 10% of your general fund budget. So again, you get above that and probably you're gonna draw some scrutiny. So, again, you guys are at 4.5, so, you know, again, we recommend around 5% is fine. Again, it just, contingency can be spent on anything at the board's discretion, so. Any question, again, all the other cash balances, I think you all have done a good job of, when Josh did the year-end budget review, budget planning, making the year-end transfers out of general and special and supplemental general to replenish those cash balances. I think you've done a good job of doing that. If we flip on over, that next graph just shows the cash carryover. Sometimes you look at those cash balances and you think, wow, what are we gonna do with that money? Well, then you look at how much you spend and realize that cash, yes, it's a significant amount, but when you relate it to the actual expenditure that you're incurring, it kind of puts it in perspective, so. Page 51 shows the revenues. I like page 52 and 53 a little better. It's the same information. It just shows the percentage. So again, the state, in 19 was 73, in 20 was 75. Remember, the state did increase the base state aid for people a little bit. So if enrollment stays the same, you're going to get a few more dollars in state aid. One thing to keep in mind is that state percentage does include the 20 mil rate for general fund that's applied to every district in the state. So it's listed as state dollars because that's what the state calls it, because the money from the taxes goes directly to the state, and they turn around and kick it back in the form of state aid. But again, it's local dollars.
So that's somewhat deceiving.
It is. Again, you just have to know, because again, before that would have been shown as local, as your local contribution. So, again, and I can show you kind of how much that is. It's a significant amount, If you flip back over to page, page 17. Well, actually, that's just going to show the total state aid. When we get to the valuation, we'll have Josh confused. He's got a calculator up there. So, okay. What we're talking about, the general fund valuation for last year was 35 million. So every mill raises 35,000.
Yeah,
So take 35,000 times 20.
that's 700,000.
There you go. That's what is included in that portion that's attributable to state aid. Because again, that money is collected locally, but gets sent directly, the county treasurer sends it directly to the state, and then it comes back to you. You don't lose any of it. It comes back to you in the form of state aid, and it is a little misleading. Yep. Okay? There's the state aid, and again, if you look at the bottom, general fund state aid, 2.5 million, 2.4 the year before. It's attributable primarily to the increase in base state aid per pupil. The other one that changed significantly is that CAPERS, we were talking about it. It went from 226 to 357. Now remember, that's just the flow through, so it doesn't affect your local financial condition. The reason it increased is because the year before, the state makes quarterly payments. So 4 times a year, they put money in, and then CAPERS takes it out. The year before, there wasn't money available, so the state only made 3 quarterly payments that CAPERS took. So in 6/30/20, there was 4 quarterly payments. That's why it increased so much. Okay? General supplemental, general fund expenditures, you can see those didn't change much over the year, page 55. 56, 57 just takes that same information. Now remember, this is just general and supplemental. So when we look at the instructional expenditures, you gotta keep in mind that those transfers that are included in this are transfers out of your general, supplemental general fund to, special revenue funds that are predominantly used for instruction. I looked at your budget, pulled the numbers off your budget, and all funds, your instructional expenditures 2 years ago were 67%. Last year, when I say last year, 6/30/19 were 6/30/19 were 67, 6/30/20 were also 67. So again, I always tell people you can almost, add the instruction and the transfer together and get pretty close. Because the transfers are going to special education, that's all instruction. At risk, that's all instruction, Most of the transfers are helping fund those budgets, so. And again, doesn't change much over the year. 58 shows that increase a little bit in total expenditures, total budget for general supplemental general fund. Again, attributable to increase in base state aid per pupil. Shows how much of that you're transferring. Remember, we talked about to spend that, you either have to buy goods or services, which is that middle line, or transfer, which is that bottom line. So again, a pretty good chunk of transfer. Page 59 shows expenditures of the special revenue funds. The capital outlay, the year before was a little bit higher. I think that was the year you replaced the boiler, Josh.
Yeah.
And that was all encumbered against 1819. And then in 1920, one of the big things was the building purchase, that was encumbered, I think. I don't know if you paid for that before the end of the year or it was encumbered, but it was charged to this year, so. The other funds, that capers we talked about, why it spiked. We've got 4 payments instead of 3. All the other funds are pretty consistent. Federal aid, on page 60, the lion's share of that is school finance formula. So, that's a pretty good chunk. You used to get money under the 21st century charter school deal. That was a pretty good chunk. This next year, we're gonna see the and you did spend some of the ESSER CARES money. But you'll also have Sparks money in 2021. So that will change a little bit. I would expect that to go up. Valuation, now remember the valuation, I told you to use 35 million. Well, remember the first 20,000 residential property is not subject to the 20 mil left, so. This is the total valuation for all other funds. So again, 37, 37, 38. But I think you did experience a decrease, didn't you, on this last budget year, Josh?
Yes.
Yeah. Like 3 million, maybe? Down to 35?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oil and gas probably would be like this.
Yep.
Mill rate, you can see how consistent you've been, which is great. I think taxpayers appreciate that. You've done a good job of that. Mill rate, extremely consistent. FTE, has kind of hung in there. What kind of FTE do you have on your SS66, do you remember?
We're pretty flat.
About flat? Okay. Nice thing about being flat in today's environment is, remember they're increasing the base state aid per pupil every year. So if you stay flat, you're going to get a few more dollars to spend. So used to be, if you weren't increasing, you were losing because that crazy base state aid was, holding its own or dropping. And then expenditures per pupil, or, yeah, that's general, something like that. Any questions? Okay, the letters are good, are real easy, because they're the same as last year, with the exception of changing the date. So, the one pager, again, as part of the audit, we're required to evaluate internal controls. If we note anything that, is what we consider a deficiency, or what accounting standards considers a deficiency, we're required to note that. It does not affect the financial statement, does not affect our opinion. We take that into consideration when we design our procedures, because again, we design them with the hopes of being able to issue an unqualified opinion. This is the same thing that all of our districts have, is just, because of the small number of people involved in the accounting function, you just can't segregate like what would be ideal. Now, you do things that help mitigate that. Josh reviews and approves all purchase orders before they get paid. The board reviews and approves before the checks are cut. So, again, you're doing the things that are good to help mitigate that. It's not anything that anybody's doing wrong. It's just kind of the nature of the size of the deal. Any questions on that? The other one is just a letter of communication. It's called communication to those charged with governance. We're just required to notify you if we run into any difficulties doing the audit, if there's any disagreements between, Elisa, Josh, Marla, and I about how something should be recorded. There were not. We never have had any. We have a number of times when, Josh will call and we'll talk about, a certain situation, how it's best to be recorded in the books and how it should be recorded in the books. We've always come to a mutually agreeable, outcome on that. So, again, we appreciate that. The AJEs are listed there. Again, nothing. Josh was talking about those encumbrances between the 2 years. Like that AJE 1 was an encumbrance from the prior year that we picked up last year. Then at the bottom, there's the AJE on the building that we picked up this year that, like Josh said, it's just based on timing of when the contract was signed and that. So, the other expenditure, or the other journal entries, were pretty minor, and just kind of getting your books closed at the end of the year to make sure you spend your budget authority. So, anything you want to add on those, John?
Nope,
Okay.
I don't think so.
Those have all been made, the books are closed, and so the reports that you're getting, reflect all of those. So, again, the encumbrances really don't affect your books because it's just a matter of which budget, like Josh said. The cash, you paid for the bill, so the cash is out, so it's just a matter of which budget year is expended. So, not a significant deal. Okay.
Anybody
You
have
probably can't understand anything I said, but I don't talk very well through these things, but.
Anybody have questions?
Again, feel free, if you have questions, you can give me a call. I'm always glad to talk about school finance. We appreciate being of service. We enjoy working with the staff, enjoy working with the school. Always look forward to coming out here, so.
We appreciate working with you and your staff, always good to work with.
All right, well, good. If we're not, you let us know.
All right, thank you. for your
Okay,
time.
thank you. We'll get the files and then I'll send you.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve
Or Aaron.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the 2019-20 audit report as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2019-20 audit report as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
One thing I might ask before I get out of your hair, the 2 pages that I passed out, I didn't give anybody 351 by mistake, did I? Because I've got an extra set, and I'm going to Maxwell next, so.
No?
Okay, we just ran an extra set then. I thought I kept them separated, but I just thought if I did, yeah, I've been known to do things like that.
Just don't-
Okay, thanks again.
Don't give them ours.
No, I won't. I do a pretty good job keeping them separate, but I thought I'd better ask. Okay, thanks a lot. You all have a good evening. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Josh, can I make sure I get a copy of that,
Yes,
of his report?
yep,
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep,
I
got it
left
for
an
you.
extra copy somewhere, so.
yep.
Elise has got it, yep.
Okay. All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Activity accounts.
This is just a formality. Board needs to approve all accounts within our activity fund, and junior high, boys and girls basketball, they haven't needed one until now. They'd like to have one. They just buy the t-shirts out of that and run money in and out. So I'd recommend the board approve that.
Mr. President, I move that the
Mr.
board,
President, I move that the board approve adding accounts for junior high girls and boys basketball in the activity fund.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board approve adding accounts for junior high girls and boys basketball and activity fund. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. COVID pay.
We have our Spark funds that need to be spent this year. We had a pretty good plan in place. We had a significant amount of technology expense for cameras that would follow the teacher around the room. For our Zoom lessons, those were back ordered and back ordered again, and we're kind of at crunch time. We need to spend that money. It needs to be spent on things specifically related to COVID. We've considered other expenses of what we could spend it on. There we have needs like a bus, things like that. We didn't feel we could push that very far to try to get an expense like that paid for. If that didn't go through, we'd end up having to reimburse the county for that money. So I think our best use of those funds would be to pay our staff a stipend. Our staff has been under a lot of extra stress. They've all had extra duties, not things that really took extra time for overtime or additional hours on their contract that they would normally be paid for, but just the stress of having the kids in their class and the kids online. Our pairs are having to do a lot more taking temperatures and dealing with those things. Everybody across the board has stepped up and done well. So I sent you all a memo here. We've got this approved through the county. Maxville has done something similar. When we went through all our numbers today, we have a few people that, for example, we have our activity bus drivers. They work 1 or 2 days a week driving. They still put in effort, but not as much time as the other bus drivers. And then we have some of our people that aren't full-time, that aren't here all the time. So when we prorated a handful of those folks, we're looking at 83 1/3 stipends at $300, which comes to $25,000. So that is 87 individuals. Some of those are prorated. So that would be my recommendation, that we provide that to our staff. We've still got wiggle room with our coronavirus funds to pay the extra staff that we did hire, at least for this semester. We can't use the Spark money for anything after the first of the year. That's got to be spent, got to be received, all that stuff. So we do have about $32,000 in CARES funds that we can pick up that other expense of the second half of the year for those extra employees that we've hired and that additional technology. So my
Josh,
recommendation.
does that include administrators as well?
It includes everybody, yes. This also includes our special ed staff, who are not our
Okay.
employees technically, but There's a handful of folks that it may not apply to that do some work here. Your paras and teachers that in special ed that are paid by the co-op, they work with our kids all day, every day. There's, for example, our physical therapist would work in multiple districts and maybe work with one or two of our kids. We didn't try to include all of those itinerant folks that may not be here but one day a week or work with just a handful of kids. So, but we are including our paras and special ed people that work with our kids pretty much all day, every day.
What about you and Blaine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Backing up just a little bit, Josh, what'll happen come January 1st? We got this order in for these cameras. Will we continue that order?
We've gone through half the year. No, we won't purchase them all. We reduced it. We were going to order 20 of them. We actually did order 20 of them, and then they were back ordered, and then back ordered again, and then we can't get them until December. Now we can't get them until January. So asking the teachers, they said, we've figured it out already. We're halfway through the year. We're going to still get 5 of them, but not the 20 that we were planning on.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the extra duty pay for the staff as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the extra duty pay for staff as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Senior work release.
All right, we have a handful of students that have applied to do the release time for seniors. Our board policy says they have to be here for 8 full semesters to graduate. This will be just waiving that for these handful of students. One thing that came up today in our policy that I didn't really, it's never come up before, but our policy says that if the students do this, they can't participate in activities association activities. So if they're a cheerleader or a basketball player or they want to run track, they can't do that if they're going to do this. Well, the Activities Association has a rule, you have to be here for 5 periods of the day. If you're here for less than that, you don't qualify to participate. So I think all along that's just been written in the policy, assuming that somebody's not going to be here for the full day. But we do have a couple of kids that would like to still participate and maybe only be gone for 2 hours. So they would still fit with the rule from the Activities Association that they're here for 5 periods, so they would qualify. And I think that we should allow that, even though it goes against our stated policy right now. But if they're going to go to work, for example, if we have a cheerleader that's going to go to work for 2 hours in the afternoon, a lot of times their practices aren't until later in the evening, or not even every day. I don't think it's good that we just say that that person can't participate in cheerleading. So I guess with board consensus, we could allow that as an administrative discretion. Obviously, if they get below the 5 periods, they can't anyway. Any thoughts on that? Okay. Okay. So the students we have are Katie Burke, Madison Brown, Louise Holgren, and Caleb Blasey. So those 4 students we'd recommend for the early release for work.
Yeah, make a motion.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the list of students for second semester early release as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the list of students for second semester early release as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right. Board board member activities. Debbie?
The special ed co-op last month did the superintendent evaluation, and we also had a couple presentations. It was kind of a long meeting, but nothing of immediate substance. We've got some changes in the handbooks that we'll be reviewing at the next meeting. But the other thing I was going to talk about, I got to participate in the KASB conference, and I sent Josh a note. I offered to bring one of the sessions back to you if the school would provide the supplies. That was for the happy hour with a mixologist who taught us how to make 3 drinks. And I don't know if you can see me, but they even provided the glass for a Kansas Sunrise, Vesper Martini, and a horse feather, which is basically a Moscow Mule without the copper nut. All of the way the format worked was we've got a list of the sessions in advance, and all of the sessions had a 20 to 40 minute video that you could watch on demand prior to that, and then the sessions were actually just Q&As with for follow-up discussions on those topics. Baser Linwood, what I found interesting about the program that I got from them was that they combined an early learning center and a child care center just for the employees at their school. It was Early Childhood Center in your city. And it was only open to school employees for the daycare. I did go to one on HVAC. It was fighting viruses by updating your HVAC, and within 2 minutes I realized I was in over my head. I didn't understand about the ionization machines and the ozone concerns and humidity levels in the way that they were talking about and where they were located. There were a couple guys who got pretty building specific. Bill Losey, who is related to Dr. Losey, who was here before, did a great presentation on a program they're doing in Hugoton with students in the workplace who are actually doing more full-time job shadowing, and they're working within 30 miles of their location to bus kids to other job sites. There was a presentation on social media, and I have to tell you, I'm really, really thankful that our board is as cooperative and as good as we are, because there were some meetings that some schools that were talking about negative and inappropriate or toxic comments that happened, live streaming the meetings so that constituents could write comments while you're actually having the meeting. 5.5 hour long meetings. Sorry, not going to do that. And as I sat there, I just kept thinking how fortunate we are that we're so compatible and that we have such a good structure. There was a program on coaching. Sue Gibbons said that there's a program, but it's mostly for superintendents, president and vice president, and they have someone come out and do 3 90-minute sessions to work on coaching with the school board. But again, I didn't see that as something that, based on what I was hearing from other schools, that I felt our school was for getting team ready for the next challenge. And then the keynote speaker, the final speaker, was a man named David Horsiger. He wrote The Trust Edge, and he has sent me initial information, and I'll be getting a copy of another book that he's got coming out. And if anybody wants a copy of the drink menu, I'll be happy to make it and bring it to the January meeting. That's it for me.
Thanks, Debbie. Gary?
It's been those couple junior high ball games though. Fortunate to be back in the gym again.
Yeah.
Amazing.
John? Raymond?
Sign out front looks good, that's the way it all turned out, I think.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just glad that we've made it through the first half of the school year almost, so I think everybody's doing a good job.
Carl?
No.
Okay. Me either. All right, administrative reports.
Evening, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be at the board meeting tonight, but I'm at Nest City for basketball games for junior high. So I thought I'd do a video, kind of go over my board report with you a little bit, my administrative report. Last week I talked to you about the independent plans of study, or excuse me, individual plans of study, the IPS that the state's requiring. We've started those with our teachers in their LS classes. We use a program called Zello, which used to be Career Cruising. And the purpose of the individual plan of study is for students to be able to go through and do some research on careers and career exploration and career building opportunities. Part of that will include some work study experience and some experiences outside the school. So that's one of the really good things about the way this works, is it gives them some practical experience. So we'll be looking for new ways to utilize our community resources to go into that and be able to offer those experiences for students. And this individual plan of study builds through the course of their 7th grade on up, possibly even earlier than that, but they just add to it each year. This year's going to be fairly intensive for our seniors particularly, because this is a state requirement. They're supposed to get finished through the end of this year. I don't know that we'll get everybody completely finished, but we're going to give it a shot. We're going to give it a try and see if we can. Teachers will have more professional development on this on the January PD day. But right now we've gotten going, and it's going pretty good so far. Everybody's just learning a new system, which right now learning a new technology is additional stuff on the plate. So we're trying to move forward, but move cautiously, not to overload that. Another thing we have coming up, ACT testing. If you remember, all juniors are given the ACT test, and that's a free test to them through the state of Kansas. And they will take that on February 23rd. The other test that we give our juniors is the Work Keys test, and I believe that's on March 8th. I think I put that in the board report as March 9th, but that'll be on Monday, March 8th. And what that Work Keys is it's more of the career and technical education type testing to determine where their skills are as far as workplace experience. There are some industries and businesses, particularly in the east side of the state, central part of the state, that are requiring the Work Keys testing before employment. So that'll help our kids. That'll give them some type of certificate as they leave high school. Remote learning with students. We're doing pretty well right now with our remote learning. We've had some struggles, but we're going forward. We still have a handful of kids who are choosing to go remote, and we've worked through a lot of those struggles, and I think we're starting to get more effective with it. It's still not as good as face-to-face. We do have our teachers prepared to go remote at any given time because of COVID, so we're continuing with that. That's been a focus of our discussions, is just make sure you're always ready. You never know when that might happen. It might be you go home one day, and the next day, that night you find out the next day you're going to be teaching remote. So we're hoping to have our teachers ready for that on any given time. But everybody's getting more comfortable with the technologies. We're getting some things ironed out, so it's looking pretty good right now. With activities, we had our band vocal concert scheduled for the 17th, Thursday of this week. And because of COVID and being able to crowd into the gym or the auditorium or anything, we canceled that as a concert, but we still plan on releasing that as a virtual event. So it's being recorded. Today, the class was supposed to record the band portion of it. They didn't get to do that for various reasons, but hopefully next day or two they'll be able to record that. Mr. Knight will put that together, and that'll be out on Facebook, and I'll post it out to Twitter as well. So it'll be a social media event that people can view. Other activity stuff, I guess, as far as you guys know, you've heard all of this. Acacia revisited and visited and revisited again their plan for what they're going to do with spectators at events. Right now, every participant's family is limited to 2 people, and those have to be a parent or guardian. Can't be extended family at those contests, so only parents and guardians. You can't transfer from one student to the other. And the other thing that they really focused on was the family gets 2, not 2 per kid. So if somebody has 3 people participating in activities, that isn't 6 tickets. That's still just 2 for that event. There will be no junior high and high school sports practices from December 23rd to January 3rd. That's Acacia's new winter moratorium. No competitions until January 8th. The 8th is the first day we can have those competitions. So we'll come back on the 4th. We'll be able to practice the 4th through the 7th. Our first high school game is January 8th with Ness City at home. We did lose 2 games in the week of January on the 5th and the 7th. We lost a high school game with Kinsley and a junior high game with Kinsley. We're looking at rescheduling those and making those up. I don't think that date has been set in stone, but for high school, we were thinking February 11th, I think, is what we were looking at there. But anyway, we're going to try and get those games rescheduled so we don't just lose those, particularly the high school. I want to go back to the ruling with 2 participants in each family. That includes all participants, not just the athletes. So cheerleaders, and in January, we plan on having pep band at the games. So technically each person who's in pep band, their parent can have 2, or they can have 2 parents or guardians at that event as well. So as we get into January, the numbers attending could rise a little bit. I think we're still going to be well within our, we were looking at allowing 250 to 300 people before. I think we'll still be within that on most events. So still be pretty limited in our crowd. And then as of now, all those restrictions for crowd size as from Acacia goes away on the 28th. We'll just have to reevaluate that as we get closer. So in our crazy time that we've had, the Southwest Kansas Music Education Association typically has a tryout for district honor band, and this year they did a virtual type of thing. In middle school, junior high, Rafael Gonzalez, 7th grader, earned 2nd chair in alto sax, and that's pretty good. That's his first opportunity to even be represented in that junior high or middle school honor band. So congratulations to Rafael. Mackenzie Hacker, Peyton Meyer, Jessica Owens, and Darby Smith all earned honors for the district honor choir and eligible for state. I think we have some state results, but I don't have those with me right now, but I think we had some of those that actually made district or made all state in vocal. Basketball, the Midwinter Classic's been our topic. I've had a lot of people ask me about it. We do plan on still continuing with the Midwinter Classic with our crowd restrictions and everything. And I just think it's gonna be able to, we're gonna be able to pull it off. So we've been preparing to get that done. Things will look a little bit different this year, simply because it's not the Lions Club anymore, and we're having to make a lot of changes because of COVID. So be more updates as we go along, but still planning on doing that. Excuse me, our Scholars Bowl has participated. We had to cancel our own Scholars Bowl because of a COVID quarantine issue. But we're going to look at another date, maybe in January, to get that. Scholar Bowl still going on. Those competitions are somewhat limited, but we think they'll have 2 to 3 more events that there will be no spectators at those. It will only be the competitors. And we are co-oping with Stafford again this year with some wrestlers going over there to wrestle. Right now, I think we have 6 wrestlers, 5 or 6. It was 6 the last I knew, and there was a question on one of them. But as of right now, we have 6 kids wrestling for Stafford. So if you see anything about that or anything, wish them well. It's a good opportunity for them to be able to compete in something different. And with that being said, the other thing that I have is, as far as competing, we tried to get a trap team going last year, and we had it all set up and everything. When it got time to do it, COVID hit. They were stringing everything out and along, and we ended up not having our trap team. It is my full intention to go forward with that this year. I probably won't be able to have as much involvement in it as I had planned on last year, just because of the way things have changed here. But I think we have several people who are willing to help with that and can make that go forward. So we'll be reaching out to students and getting that set up within the next month or month and a half, and hopefully things work out and we can have our trap team that we talked about last year. So that's my report. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
All right. Mr. Meyer?
I wanted to give you a quick update on all this COVID mess. It's been kind of interesting to see just how things have changed, have evolved, and we've figured out how to do things. Things like when we talked about starting the school year, we want to keep the kids separate. First graders with first grade. We don't want the high school kids, coming down and working with the kids. And oh my God, there's a high school kid that came down in the elementary hallway. What are we going to do? We've learned to work with that. And not that things have gotten easier, but we've learned that things aren't quite as critical as we thought they might be. Every week I go through our gating criteria in our operations plan: green, yellow, orange, red. We've never been out of the yellow. We've never gotten to orange. Now in our county, we've gotten to red on the number of active cases, which is over 10. We've been there for a long time. But looking at our cases here and our absences and the number of people we've had quarantined, so right now the numbers tell me we're right at green or yellow, just with the number in the county. And coming off of Thanksgiving, we erred on the side of, we had to just say it's yellow right now, so being a little more careful. But so I think sometimes there's that perception that we look at the gating criteria of the percentage of positive tests and the number of new cases per 100,000 people on the state's website is in red. The entire state is red except for one county. Well, we shouldn't have our kids at home right now. That's not good for the kids, and there's no reason we can't be operating our school. So we look at it locally. I look at it every week. Every week I dig into the data. So I wanted to make sure you all know that we're not just flying by the seat of our pants. We've been bouncing from green to yellow the entire year. So we've never gotten to the point where we've had to shut things down We've gotten close to considering we probably shouldn't have fans at this upcoming game. But I feel good about where we are. I think we've been lucky. We're doing things right, a combination of both of those things. Things have gone very well. The state is providing a waiver on the minimum number of hours. 1,116 hours are required for student instruction. We can count the time that they're in class, in school. We can count half of the time we have teachers in professional development, and we can count the time that we have parent-teacher conferences. So all of that goes into that 1,116 hours. But the state board they will waive 20 of those hours as long as those 20 hours are replaced with professional development time. So right now, we had that one day with our food service. We took the day off, but we had the staff here, so we didn't lose a full day. We lost a full day with kids, but we could count half of it for professional development. So we're just over 2 days that we have extra above the minimum. So if we have a snow day, if we have 2 snow days, we're out. We can't have any more of that. But we do have that waiver that was about 3 days that we could say, we're not going to have kids in school, but we're going to do professional development. So there is that option. We want to keep our calendar as it is and get the kids here as much as we can. That's our goal, but there is that option. KDHE and CDC came out with shortened quarantine guidance. So the guidance was you could reduce the quarantine period was reduced to 10 days. The incubation period of the virus is still 14 days, so that still matters, that 14 days. But if I come in contact with somebody who tested positive, I have to quarantine, and I can come out of quarantine after 10 days if I don't have symptoms. If I have symptoms, then we test, and obviously we can't have those people here, but then the 14 days applies. So there is an option that KBHE had for testing to get out on day 7, but the counties in our area didn't opt to do that. I don't know what the reasoning was there, but some of that is if you're going to test on day 7, it takes 2 days to get the results. That's 9 days. Why would I even bother? I'll just do the 10 days. And then I'm sure some of that is trying to keep track of who's on what day and when did they test and when's day 10, when's day 7. So our county is 10 days is the quarantine period, which will help get kids and teachers, people back in the building, but still being safe. Mr. White talked a little bit about the activities. That's a little bit of a challenge that we're working through, but our kids are getting to participate and parents are getting to watch. In our gym, I'm not very concerned about it. If we would go to a gym like lacrosse and we still have, every kid has 2 parents there, and we've got 100 junior high kids, it's pretty crowded. When we went over there, there may be times where we're going to have a conversation with other schools that have smaller facilities that we may want to do something different. For example, Nest City tonight, they have a limit of 100 people in a facility, so their county would not allow them to have any fans because they're at 100 people with all those junior high kids and the workers. So they're maxed out. Junior high is a little different too because we have the boys and girls, they don't have anywhere to go. Our high school kids, they can come for their game and go home. But when we go to Nest City, we have all of our kids in that gym. They don't have anywhere else to go other than the bus, I guess. So we'll have some challenges to work through here. It's gone pretty well though. The games we've gone to have gone pretty smoothly. People are spread out. I don't feel there's a lot of risk from what I've seen. Mr. White kind of went over the remote learning. It's not a good situation. If the parents can be there and work through with the kids, especially those younger ones, they're successful. We have some kids that are very successful with it, and we have some that are not. So it is what it is, based on the needs of the family. We're working through that. Vaccine is coming. I don't know if they've had any in Kansas today, but they're across the nation. They've had the first vaccines given. We have to keep in mind this isn't the end. Yeah, it gives us some light at the end of the tunnel, but we're just now getting into the tunnel, it seems like. So on our house remodel, we've got most of the demo done. Adam, you want to give us a quick update on that?
Yeah, it's been really good. A lot more volume than I thought it was going to be. We've spent probably the last 10, 11 weeks just demoing, tearing off the plaster from the walls and then putting it in the dumpster. We filled up 7 dumpsters from Kansas dirt, and we got the ceilings tore off, some of the flooring tore off in some spots, and I'm just getting ready to build a new staircase. Just got to order some stuff, and we're going to open up some of the rooms and put a big beam in so we can span it and make the living room and the dining room kind of flow together. So it's going really well. I think the kids were ready for this to be over, like the demo part of it, because we're ready to start putting things back together and start learning the building trade aspect of it. But it's been going really well. It's going really well.
So we're kind of waiting on, we're working with Davis Electrical to redo the plumbing and the plumbing service and the gas service and electrical service and the water service. Those things need to happen. So I've been talking with Kevin and Ryan about getting in to give us some input on that so we can finish our design of where things need to be. So that's really the next hurdle, and then we'll start building. How many days did you guys spend just pulling nails
Oh gosh,
from the plastic?
weeks. It just seemed forever. I mean, they overdid the nails. Like you could have gotten away with not as many, but they I just can't believe how many nails we pulled. So yeah, it's all been good.
Thanks, Adam.
On our professional development, we've done more self-directed things on teachers learning new tools for the remote learning and developing their remote lessons and being ready for that. Just giving time for teachers to have to work. We do have to get some dyslexia training in this spring that's mandated. But I think with our calendar, a lot of districts, I think KSDU said something like 80% of the school districts had all of their professional development days done by September 15th. So they just front-loaded all that professional development, trying to get ready for this crazy year. Well, now they have nothing. They have no days to work or plan or learn. So I think we did it right, adding some days. So I don't think we'll have to add any more. I think we're good with the calendar we have. One thing that came up at the State Board of Education meeting is they've signed on to, they want to recommend that schools and all the colleges in the state have one spring break. So they've recommended those weeks each year, I think for the next 3 years. It's pretty similar to what we've been doing in the middle of March. But it's not mandatory, it's optional, but that will come up at some point. So all of the colleges, all of the public schools, it's recommended that they have the same spring break. So we've been working, we've moved over on our workers' comp insurance. Elisa got us rolling on all that, learned all of that. I worked with them this last week on just catching up on the loss prevention, and they're pretty good to work with. Midwinter Classic, I don't really have anything else to add to that. We'll have 5 nights for that, 7 boys teams, 4 girls teams. We may have to end up spreading it out a little bit. Right now I think we're starting at 4:30, 6, and 7:30. We may have to go like 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 8 o'clock for the games, just so we can have the game, clear folks out, and then have the next game. That's kind of what they did at Larned after the game. So we didn't have more people in there than we needed in there. But And one thing to keep in mind, next month, January meeting, we elect a president and vice president. So that's kind of a change from what's been done in recent years, but that'll keep that on your radar if anybody wants to do that.
All right, thank you. Executive session.
This will be quick. I only have a couple of items to talk through briefly, 5 minutes.
Okay.
Just me.
You have a motion?
Mr. President, Mr. President, I move the board go into executive session to discuss the performance and qualification of specific employees pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KOMA with Mr. Meyer be included, and that they return to open session at 8:23. 7:23.
Got a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we go into executive session to discuss the performance and qualifications of specific employees pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KOMA with Mr. Meyer to be included, and that we return to open session at 7:23 in this room. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. Bring the meeting back to order. First step, superintendent contract.
You have a copy of my contract extension on your supporting documents. I would ask that the board approve that contract as presented.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the extension of the superintendent contract as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. All right. Future agenda items.
Mr. Pre-
Consider principal contracts, president, vice president election, and we'll have to verify our meeting dates. With the change, they set those in January, but we already set them. We just have to verify them. And then think about negotiations.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I move we adjourn.
Been moved and seconded, we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Both same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.